What we'll do is, Stephen, you take any questions and go down through them a little bit, and then Coach, you do the same thing. And Will, to the extent they do, you do the same thing on your own, or ask any questions. I think that's better. Not a lot to talk about before we get into the players. So once you start it off.
I mean, you want to take questions, or do you want to?
Or just what we ought to do, I think we ought to just go down through each player and give a thought about it. Take questions.
You see how our day went today?
We're good.
Get me a drink.
So, Stephen, can you go like pick by pick? And just...
There you go.
Okay, guys, let's do it. We'll just take the questions.
The tight end, the fourth round pick, can you talk about him?
Jake Ferguson. Obviously, we had a chance to visit him at the combine, and had really good grades on him. I think his versatility, both on the ball, off the ball, tough guy. Grew up in it. Really liked his attitude and his demeanor. I think he's an excellent fit for our guys.
Are those tight ends at Wisconsin considered like linemen? They obviously block well there. Is he one of those guys that can block on the line?
Yeah, I think he can play both on the line and off the line. I think he'll be good in the insert schemes. Makes competitive catches, plays with some tenacity. Like I said, I was real excited to, based on where we had him ranked and everything. So to have him available there was excellent.
Good football background with Alvarez, being his granddad.
Coach Alvarez.
Grew up with it.
How much did you talk to him, Mike, during that process? I don't know if you called him on the phone or.
Me personally, just had a chance to meet him at the combine. He was one of our interviews here. So, so it was obviously spent a lot of time at the University of Wisconsin and was always in the locker room and obviously had a lot of good positive feedback about him.
How well do you know his grandfather?
Cordially. Yeah, I've had a chance to be around Coach Alvarez a number of times, and obviously what he means to the University of Wisconsin, and hey, he's got a stature in front of the stadium. I think that says it all.
Mike, I know you were saying going into this draft that you consider this a huge class from the standpoint of just the roster integrity that kind of the last couple of years. Can you talk about that a little bit more, and did you accomplish what you hoped to accomplish in this?
Definitely. I mean, I think every prospect speaks for himself, but what they bring as a class is, to me, this business is about stacking success, and we, and from my perspective, this is 3 draft classes now that we've stacked together that I think really holds the future bright for us. Draft and develop is the bloodline, lifeline of how you want to build your football team inside and out. Obviously, we were able to hit positions of need, and but I really like the way everything came together as far as putting the board together, and frankly, we were very disciplined and patient and stuck to our board.
Stephen, do you feel like you guys might have drafted a little bit more for need this year than you maybe have the last 2 years?
Not at all.
And I don't know, I just feel like that's kind of the outside look at the way the first few picks and things like that. Just throughout the entire draft, you felt like you guys just took the top player that was there?
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of, you look at it and there's obviously, positions here where it helps, but that was across the board. We didn't get a quarterback, we didn't get a running back, but those are, positions of strength for us. We obviously signed our 3 safeties back and, position of strength, but I wouldn't necessarily say there were those positions that were doing that to us, when we were picking other players. I think it was just sorting through, when was the best time, to get these players, whether who's, if it's the best guy right off the bat's the lineman, then take him. If it would have been the pass rusher, then take him. But I think we did a really good job there of working through our board. I think starting this morning, all the picks until Ridgeway came from our 4th round, and we just worked through it and made good decisions. Actually, Clark was actually a 3rd rounder, but because of his injury, there was there was reason why we didn't jump on him right away because of the, with his injury that he went through this year. Then, he's going to be a guy who's going to be a pup guy, and we'll see how he responds as to what part of the season he can join us.
So all the picks were rated as fourth rounders, except for Ridgeway.
All the way through Ridgeway, and Clark was actually a third rounder.
Other guys are all fourth. Okay, on your board.
You were saying last night when you were coming down, you had a discussion about whether or not to move up and use some of your capital to do that. Did you determine not to do that? Did you still try to move up today? And just in general, with the 4 picks in the 5th round, what your approach was?
We never tried to move up. We just felt like, we had, a big group of players in that 4th round there that we really liked. I mean, I think we were, been saying that for 2 weeks now, that we felt like the weight of our draft board was really weighted toward, the 4th and 5th round, and, felt like there was going to be a big group of players there that we could really improve our football team with.
I assume that the phone was ringing with other teams today. Are you kind of surprised that you didn't make a trade to move up or move down at all?
It was ringing, but it's, not anything that really enticed us. I mean, when the time came for us to take a pick, we had, several calls, a couple times where, hey, do you want to move back? But usually it was too far back for us to really have interest in it. But, I think those 4-5s really paid dividends for us. I think we're going to have a really good group of players out of those 4 5th-round picks.
Clark's injury, can you just talk about that and the expectations for him?
Well, I think we've got a good feel for it in terms of what we're looking at with him. I mean, he's definitely going to, at a minimum, be a PUP guy. And so he'll miss, 6 months from his time of surgery. And, this is a guy who works. And football is very important to him, very committed to getting back. And, is going to work through his injuries. And, if anything, he's going to be one of those guys that's ahead of schedule. So
it's not a redshirt year. He could have a chance to play this year.
Absolutely.
The Senior Bowl seemed to be a pretty important event on your guys' calendar. It is every year, but a lot of picks from Mobile. Can you maybe go into what you guys saw there and how instrumental that event was to formulate the draft?
For me, I think the Senior Bowl gives you an opportunity to see those players live and in a different environment. You get to have your hands on them. You get to see them compete against the better guys. And so that does add to it, but that's not the end-all to be-all. That's just a piece of the puzzle. We do like to see them in that environment, see if it matches with the information we get. Then you go to Combine, you do all those other things to add to it. But it is a good exposure to those guys at the Senior Bowl.
For a guy like Will McClay, though, who's moving up in a level, is it more important than it is for some other guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point. Okay, we're talking coming from that conference, and then you just want to see them against better players, and then you see how the physical skill set matched against the big college players, and you showed that he belonged, and then he just continued to grow from that point, in our eyes with how he did at the interview, at the Combine, and everything else we've done with him.
Can you talk a little bit more about him, just what you see and how you project him, just where he is in his development and kind of what he needs to do?
Well, what he is a football player that plays the game the right way. He's got prototypical NFL tackle size. He can play either side, and he plays the game nasty and physical. And then, it's kind of the tempo that coach wants to set and we want from our linemen. So he has that skill set, and then he has growth from that. He had an injury a couple of years ago with his knee, and he wasn't able to rehab that. It was during the COVID year, but he found a way to do that in Minnesota through the snow and everything else to get ready to play. And so the sky's the limit for him, and still there's opportunity to grow from that and get stronger.
Mike, the roster as it sits now, as you head to OTAs and then maybe even on into camp, do you like all the pieces are there? Is there anything else you might like to see before that time hits?
Well, we're obviously just getting started on the potential rookie free agency process, so that'll be another add. I think we'll probably have close to 19 players there that'll be added to this class. But yeah, definitely. I think like anything, I've always looked at the collection of talent as the starting line. The connection of the talent among your football team is where the real money's at, and that's where we're focused on.
Stephen, with a guy like Clark, when you go through the medicals with him, is it, hey, have the Cowboys had a guy like this, has had this injury, come back from it, so you feel more comfortable about it?
Yeah, you kind of hate to get in talking about other people's injuries this day and time. You get yourself in trouble, but we do have, we were able to compare Clark to a player on our team that very similar. So feel good about it, and feel good about this guy and how he's going to go about his business and how much he loves the game. I really think we got our hands around this, and this guy's one hell of a football player when he's healthy. So, and think he'll be healthy. Like I said, in time, maybe even to, really help us this year at some point.
You added some linebacker depth. How important is that when Micah maybe can move around, and the more depth you have there, more versatile he could be on defense?
I mean, it's very important, and those are conversations that are ongoing. I mean, it's obviously Mike is a featured player on our defense, and as much flexibility that we can put around him to really take advantage of his flexibility. And every time his name comes up, I always go back to, from an offensive perspective. I mean, he's someone that every week is going to be targeted as far as how the offense is going to try to help, whether it's in protection or so forth. So yeah, definitely player flex and our defensive front has definitely been a priority the last 2 years, and I think it was a big part of our success last year.
You guys like in Bland? You guys like in Bland?
Big, long, athletic corner, and it fits again the prototype of what we're looking for when you build your defense. You want big outside corners that we call it vertical control, can stop the vertical routes, be able to run with those guys and then make plays on the football, and then the athleticism that he has. So you're adding another young, big, athletic, corner to the mix.
Jerry, do you remember your conversation with Ridgeway after the A&M game?
Let me tell you this. We got that trophy. You notice I say we, the pigs, got that trophy sitting out there at AT&T Stadium, and the picture of him and several of the others when I presented them the trophy as a keepsake. And yes, I remember him well. And then, of course, we've gotten to see him play here over the years, and it was real rewarding for me to see Dan and see the coaches, as well as see us all see how he could help us and come in here and help us as a big man. As Mike said, I said, boy, we've got our boy Bohannon from Kentucky. He said, we need two of these big guys. They need to alternate some plays. So I'm proud for him. He's a unique pick for us relative to most of the years we've picked with the Dallas Cowboys, because we've usually had less or size and more quickness. And so Bohannon has that, more, of course, along with the size. So I'm really good because I've always, on our defense against a running game, have always held my breath on getting big boy in there. And so this is a real statement in my mind with Dan and with Mike as to how we're going to address the run game when we get into the playoffs, which we're sure to have. And Mike was sitting there all day going, playoffs, just remember the playoffs. So that really is not only a great pick, he's a hell of a competitor. He really is. But it's also a philosophical thing that feels good. Here we've got two of those big guys. While I'm at it here, I want to say that from the standpoint of how these guys were drafted in the order they were drafted in, this is one of the most unique drafts that I've been a part of. And I'm going to call it, just bear with me a second, when we got to Sam Williams, we really were really looking at Tolbert as well. And so that was a lot of time we spent how and who to pick to get both. How could we get both? And then it doesn't make any difference which was the third or fourth pick as long as you did get the both. And the facts are that those two guys were sitting there. When we got to those tight ends, when we came in this morning, and we got to those tight ends, which they were there, and a group of them were there, as many as 5, certainly 4. Well, the idea was where we were, could we wait without bumping our 4 up could we wait and get one of those tight ends with a 5th-round pick? We felt that there were attributes of all the players that made them all there together, so could we wait and get that done? We successfully did that without having to give up one of those 5s to bump the 4, because we really did know one of the 4 or 5 tight ends we wanted to get down to Bland, Clark, and Ridgeway. We almost from the get-go today had that as, boy, we want to get one of those guys with those 5th picks. How can we come out of that 5th round? Dare say, could we get 3 out of 4 or 5 of our top 5th-round picks? Well, you can't do that if you get nervous and give up another pick to go get it. So unbelievably, we sat down with that 5th pick, and when we got in that deal right there, those were the guys. Those were the 4 guys. And the question was, could we wait and which one to take first? Certainly we knew that because of the injury situation, we were excited about all of that group there. The way this draft went, we were really fortunate because the Sam Williams-Tolbert thing was a product of a pod concept, and which one would be there, which one it wasn't. And we had a very interesting time today talking about the sequence of how those guys were drafted, because we had them all in the same kind of thought there. And I know we're talking about different positions, but we're also talking about how the round failed. And that was quite a participation. I wish all of you could have been in there to see it. Now, you want to find out who makes the pick when you go through that. If you'd been a fly on the wall to see that, you don't know today, and I don't know who made those picks. When we got through it, it was that kind of participation, that kind of collaboration. Exactly, that is the word. But not necessarily really where it was on the board as much as which one, because they were close enough. There weren't 3 points worth of difference on all of them on these decisions. Same thing on the Tolbert situation. So the trick is which one would last the longest when you're going down the draft. And so that's the best I've ever seen us work it in a draft room, with a combination of how we ended up with these players that if you'd walked in here and started this morning, this is what we'd like to come up with. We knew we were going to get at least 2 or 3 of them, surely. But could we fix it to where we could get each one of them in a group of 5 or 6, get 5 of them? We did.
How much improved is the team after the draft, where talent-wise?
You're looking at me, and I guess you're asking me, and very well. I think as much as we improved the team.
So just so all of our listeners on the radio can hear this, we are going to break, but you can join the rest of the press conference on DallasCowboys.com. We'll be back in a minute. I'm sure they probably won't be wrapped up by then, but our NFL draft coverage continues on 105.3 The Fan and DallasCowboys.com.
Where you were in this draft, that wasn't really possible being at the end of each round. But so you feel it is comparable to that? It's not more of a blue collar kind of fill the spaces.
Obviously, one of the questions that I kept asking Mike and Dan and if you will and Stephen, and one of the questions I kept asking, is there a pick here that would give us a big compliment to what Micah is? Is there a pick here that would make him have more pass pressure, or let us use him more flexibly behind the line of scrimmage, get more blitz out of him, or get that? Where's the complementary aspect to it? And we really addressed that good. And I think that when you look at Damian Clark and you look at Harper, I think that, and then when you step over and look at Sam Williams, I think we have really upped what the options that we have with Micah to get that done. That was in the forefront of our thinking there. And so we really, I think, built off of the good fortune that we had of getting Micah Parsons last year.
Your primary offensive groupings are 11 and 12. What did you feel like those back-to-back picks in the 3rd round, Tolbert and then the tight end Ferguson, did to get better as an offense in that regard?
I mean, definitely. I mean, you don't just play with 3 tight ends, or excuse me, three receivers and 2 tight ends. So, I mean, flexibility is something we talked about. We talk a lot about one back offense versus two back offense versus no back offense, obviously, is an auxiliary approach. But the ability to be in 12 personnel with two tight ends and play the same as you do in 11 personnel, but also get into more of the 8-gap run game, more two-back downhill, more action. I think we can do things in first and second down to make it a little easier on Dak. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that when we talk about how will we use these players, what the importance of having, quality backups all through your 11 personnel focus and your 12 personnel focus was all part of that. So yeah, definitely. I mean, we drafted 9 players. Yeah. So we got a lot better here the last 3 days. So that's very important. And these guys I think they're obviously very talented, but they're all very good fits for how we want to play.
Can you talk about your comfort level at the center position and just I think you had a chance to maybe get the best one in the draft, but is it you just got a lot of confidence in Biotish and you feel like you just didn't want to get anybody that could maybe stop any kind of progress there?
I wouldn't say that was the approach. I think, like anything, you want as much competition throughout your roster. I mean, to me, the healthiest roster is the most competitive. I think last year was a great example. I think what the NFL's done with the roster flexibility, learning from the pandemic and having that many people, the opportunity to have that many players in the building is huge. I think it's great for the game of football. I think it's definitely benefits us here for how we want to function. I wouldn't say we just stayed away from it. So, and I think Steven says it every time we talk about player acquisition. It's an ongoing process. So, I mean, you're always trying to make things as competitive as possible.
You touched on it a little bit, but do you feel with Smith in the first and then Ferguson that you did improve the run game and how much was finding some guys to help you in the run game an emphasis this whole season?
Yeah, definitely. You want to be big, athletic, and long up front. And, I mean, I think, if you even take it further, you're trying to hit the target on how many tackles you want, on your 90-man roster and so forth. So to add 2 young tackles, to our offensive line, I thought was huge for us.
Stephen, you often tell us you take snapshots of the cap 2-3 years down the road and things like that. When you look at having the picks you had today, does that play a part in that? Because you know what's coming salary cap wise with the big money guys you have, and then what you may have with Trayvon and Micah and CD.
It's always on your mind. I mean, that's why we do take snapshots 2 and 3 years out. It's not just who's going to be here for this year. It's you can project out a little bit and know there's going to be some holes 2 years from now and 3 years from now. So, that's why, and it's just like Nick said, he's wondering, you say we drafted for need, but yet he said we didn't address a need. So I think that's part of it. I mean, it all depends on, I think all teams, would like to have more I think every spot on your roster can be a need when you're getting into those type of things, competitiveness, compete for a roster spot. I would add Farniok, as a guy that we really like a lot, that's going to push somebody. And, we're going to be playing him at center, correct, Mike? Absolutely. And, he's going to push. And he was a guy we drafted last year, and he's done nothing but come in here and do everything the right way. But I think all these guys you look at, when you look at taking tackles like that, and we got Ball, what's this roster going to look like 2 and 3 years from now in terms of, who will be on it? And, we weren't against. We looked at a couple of running backs because, Pollard's going to be free next year. Rico's going to be restricted. Zeke's making a lot of money. All those things come into play. This thing's fluid, especially as you start to look at 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
It's hard for me personally to take a center that can get knocked back. Now, I understand reach, and I understand going to the second level, and I understand the importance of the center to call. That's just me. But it's real hard if that center can't interchangeable and be a good guard, which does take a lot of base, then it's hard for me to go with just that with the makeup of our team right now. And so that when it's obviously a prospect that could be both center guard appeals to me more. And so someone asked the question here earlier, why'd you pass on that center? When you are sitting there with center, we've got that. We've got a big base guy here. And so and obviously we had alternatives when we got it done.
I was just wondering who the best center was. That's all. That's all. Just,
Yeah.
Any of the center.
Well, I think, Jerry makes a huge point, especially in today's NFL. It's pertinent to how defenses are playing, especially more in first and second time, more than ever. Your center's covered up. And if you've ever had a small center or undersized center, which I have, and you deal with it, and then you line up on Sunday, and first thing you look for is, how many times they're going to leave your center uncovered. So, your center's not uncovered very often right now. We call it 5-man spacing, where they cover both your center and guards and get to it, many different ways. No different how we get to it with Micah. So that's important right now. That's definitely a trend you have to pay attention to.
How strongly did you consider using a pick on a kicker, or was it that's the first thing we address after the draft, and they're going to want to come here because they know there's a spot open?
Well, I would have used a pick on a kicker if I hadn't wanted to use it on something I thought was better than a kicker. Well, it was in there, seriously. I think I watched the success that they had this year with the draft pick on the kicker. So I went into this thing thinking we might could use a pick on a kicker, but we had a better choice.
Matt Waletzko, we've talked about him, but can you maybe just detail, whoever would like it, kind of what you see in terms of his traits that you have to work with and what it looks like from a developmental standpoint, while also just kind of wrapping that in with, there are a lot of young offensive linemen on this roster that you guys are kind of developing, with Tyron and Zach in the building, and what that could mean for the future of that room.
Well, I want Coach to answer that, but I will tell you, he sure took the spot of a veteran swing guy out here in free agency. We won't be seeing one of those. So, Coach.
Yeah, definitely, and that was part of the conversation. But yeah, Matt, really like his length. I think we all have comparables of players we have worked with in the past, and in one. 36-inch arms. John Alt was the first, left tackle that I was around in the league back in the 90s, and I just always had such great respect for him. And John was was ridiculously long that way. So Matt has that kind of ability. Obviously, his athletic ability, has the ability to play both left and right tackle. So I thought he was an excellent choice, particularly at that time, and it's someone that we had our eye on and was talking about for a while.
Athletically, he seems to be the day two type of guy. Him being able to be found when you guys got him, that just small school and some natural rawness there to develop, or why do you? What part of his profile is why he was available when he was?
Yeah, and that's all fair, and I think also you look at every individual's path, no different than his path, with the injury that he had and during the pandemic, and so you factor all those experiences into it, and playing at a smaller school, and but I think particularly the last 10 years in the league, the smaller school guys have been getting more credit and have carried more value. So I think I know I keep saying this, but I think he's a really good fit for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And we are back here from the SWBC studios at the Star in Frisco as the front office just wrapping up their post-draft press conference in the media room upstairs. Glad you're with us. David Hellman, Brian Broaddus, Bobby Belt, Kyle Yeomans. And we've got a whole nother round to get through now. We've wrapped up the post-draft press conference.
And